My grandson left me bleeding on the sidewalk and said, "She won't make it." But I did. I never thought I'd hear those words from my own flesh and blood. From the boy I raised since he was 5 years old when my daughter, his mother, died in that horrible car accident. From the child I sacrificed everything for. My name is Eleanor Mitchell. I'm 68 years old, and 3 months ago, my grandson Adam tried to kill me. It was a crisp October morning. I remember the leaves crunching beneath my feet as I walked down the driveway to check my mailbox. Adam had come over earlier, asking for money again. Something about business investments gone wrong. His third emergency this year. "Grandma, I just need $50,000 to get back on my feet," he'd said, his voice strained with what I once believed was genuine distress. The business is going to take off, I swear. I'd given him money before, too many times to count. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. Paid for his college, helped with the down payment on his house, covered his wedding to Melissa. But something changed in me that morning. Maybe it was how he wouldn't meet my eyes, or how he kept checking his watch, impatient for my answer. "Adam, I can't keep doing this," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I've looked at your business plan and it doesn't make sense. I think you need professional help, not more money." His face changed then. The mask slipped. Just for a second, but long enough for me to see something I'd never noticed before. Something cold, calculating. "You don't understand," he snapped. "This is different. I need this money." "I'm sorry, but no." That's when he started following me. Outside. I thought he was just continuing the conversation, but his breathing had changed. Quick, shallow. "You know, Grandma, you're sitting on this big house, all this money, and for what? You're just wasting away here." I turned to face him at the bottom of the driveway. "Adam, that's enough." "No, it's not enough. Do you know what Melissa and I could do with your money? Instead, you're hoarding it like some selfish—" "I think you should leave," I said, my hand instinctively clutching my cardigan closer. What happened next plays in my mind in slow motion, over and over again. Adam's face contorting with rage. His hands on my shoulders, the force of the push, the terrible weightless feeling before I hit the concrete, the crack of my head against the sidewalk, the warm wetness spreading beneath me. I lay there, the world spinning, unable to move. Adam stood over me, his face a blur. I thought he would help me up, call an ambulance, show some remorse. Instead, he pulled out his phone. "It's done," he said to someone on the other end. His voice was cold, detached. "She fell. Hit her head pretty bad. There's a lot of blood." A pause. "No, I'm not calling 911 yet. She won't make it. I'll wait a bit, then call and say I found her like this." He thought I couldn't hear him. I was already slipping away, but I heard every word, each one cutting deeper than the wound on my head. My own grandson, planning my death on our family property. Waiting for me to die so he could inherit everything. I don't know how long I lay there, blood pooling around my head, fighting to stay conscious. Mrs. Winters from across the street found me. She was walking her dog and saw me on the ground. She told me later that Adam was sitting on my porch steps, scrolling through his phone while I bled out on the sidewalk. "Oh my God, Eleanor!" she'd screamed, running over. "What happened?" "Adam, call an ambulance." He pretended to be shocked, rushing over as if he'd just noticed me there. "Grandma, oh no, I was just about to check on her." The ambulance came. The paramedics worked on me, voices urgent. I remember fragments. The oxygen mask, the brightness of the ambulance interior, Adam's face hovering above me, performing concern for the benefit of others. "Hang in there, Grandma," he said, holding my hand for the paramedics to see. But his eyes were empty, calculating. At the hospital, I learned I had a severe concussion and needed stitches for the gash on my head. The doctor mentioned how lucky I was that my neighbor found me when she did. "With head injuries like these, especially at your age, time is critical," he explained. My age. That's what Adam was counting on. That at 68, I wouldn't be strong enough to survive the fall. That my body would give up easily, conveniently. I lay in that hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, and made a decision. Adam believed I was weak, disposable. A means to an end. I would show him how wrong he was. When the nurse came in to check my vitals, I asked her for a pen and paper. My hands shook as I wrote down everything that had happened, exactly as I remembered it. Then I asked her to witness it and sign it. She looked confused but did as I asked. That night, while Adam and his wife Melissa visited, all sympathetic words and concerned touches for the benefit of the hospital staff, I watched them. Really watched them. The way they exchanged glances. When they thought I wasn't looking. How Melissa kept asking about my affairs being in order. How Adam mentioned, just casually, that perhaps I should consider moving in with them, where they could take care of me. We have that big guest room downstairs, Melissa said, her smile not reaching her eyes. You wouldn't even have to worry about stairs. Or witnesses, I thought. That's very thoughtful, I managed, my voice weak. Not from injury, but from the effort of containing my rage. Let me think about it. They left looking satisfied. They thought they had me exactly where they wanted me. But they were wrong. As I lay in that sterile hospital room, pain throbbing at my temple, I realized something. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about justice. About reclaiming my life from those who saw me as nothing more than an inheritance waiting to be claimed. Adam had no idea what he'd awakened in me that day on the sidewalk. He thought he'd left a helpless old woman bleeding on the concrete. Instead, he'd created his worst nightmare. 3 days in the hospital gave me plenty of time to think. The doctors were concerned about my recovery, not just the physical wounds, but the emotional trauma of what they believed was an accidental fall. If only they knew. On the 4th morning, Dr. Rivera came in during her rounds. She was different from the other doctors. Younger, more observant. She checked my chart, then looked directly into my eyes. Mrs. Mitchell, something's been bothering me about your case, she said quietly, closing the door behind her. The angle of your head injury doesn't match a simple fall. My heart raced. I hadn't told anyone the truth yet. Wasn't sure if I should. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She sat on the edge of my bed. I worked in an elder abuse clinic for 2 years before coming here. I've seen injuries like yours before. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Mrs. Mitchell, did someone hurt you? The directness of her question brought tears to my eyes. After decades of being strong, raising my daughter alone after my husband died, then raising Adam after losing her, I wasn't used to vulnerability, but something about Dr. Rivera made me trust her. My grandson, I said finally. He pushed me. I expected disbelief. Instead, she nodded slowly. I suspected as much. The bruising on your upper arms matches handprints. She leaned closer. Mrs. Mitchell, we need to report this. No, I said quickly. Not yet. But, Dr. Rivera, please, I need time to figure this out. If we report it now, he'll deny everything. It'll be his word against mine. She frowned. You're afraid of him. Not afraid. I corrected her. I'm planning. Something in my tone must have convinced her. She studied me for a long moment, then pulled out her card and wrote something on the back. This is my personal number. Call me anytime. She hesitated. I'll give you some time, but I can't ignore this forever. You understand? I nodded, tucking the card under my pillow. That afternoon, Adam and Melissa came again, bringing flowers and a teddy bear like I was some child. Adam had perfected his concerned grandson act, but now that I was looking for it, I could see the calculation behind his eyes. Good news, Grandma, he announced cheerfully. We've got the guest room all set up for you. The doctor says you can be discharged tomorrow, and we'll take you straight home, to our home. Melissa nodded eagerly. We've even hired a part-time nurse to help with your recovery. It's all arranged. I bet it is, I thought. A nurse they'd chosen, who would report to them, who might even help them manage my medications. I'd heard too many stories from my friends at the senior center about elderly parents being over-medicated by greedy children. That's very generous, I said, injecting weakness into my voice. But I was thinking I might recover better in my own home with my own things around me. Adam's smile tightened. Grandma, be reasonable. You can't be alone right now. You might fall again. Or be pushed, I thought. Maybe just for a few days then, I conceded, watching relief flood his face. He thought I was giving in. But I'll need to stop by my house first, pick up some clothes, my medications. I can get those for you, Melissa offered too quickly. No, I insisted. There are personal items I need. Women's things, you know. I gave an embarrassed little laugh, and Melissa immediately backed off, as I knew she would. Besides, I should check on the house, make sure everything's turned off properly. Adam and Melissa exchanged glances. Of course, Grandma. We'll take you there first. That night after they left, I made 2 calls from my hospital room. The first was to Jacob Brenner, my late husband's attorney and one of the few people I still trusted completely. I explained everything, my voice steady despite the enormity of what I was sharing. Eleanor, this is serious, Jacob said, his usually calm voice sharp with concern. We need to go to the police. Not yet, I told him. I need evidence first. Right now, it's just my word against his. What do you need me to do? Meet me at my house tomorrow around noon. Bring the papers for my will. And Jacob? Don't tell anyone you're coming. My second call was to Sandra Wilson, my oldest friend and the executor of my current will. I asked her to meet me at the house too, but an hour after Jacob would arrive. The next morning, Adam arrived to take me home, all smiles and gentle assistance. He'd brought a wheelchair, insisting on pushing me himself. Every touch of his hands on the handles behind me made my skin crawl. We'll just stop by your place first. Like you asked, he said, helping me into his SUV. But try not to overdo it, okay? The doctor said you need rest. I nodded meekly. Of course, dear. I'll just grab a few things. The drive to my house was surreal. We passed familiar streets, the park where I used to take Adam to play, the ice cream shop where we'd celebrated his high school graduation. Memories of a boy who no longer existed, if he ever had. When we pulled into my driveway, I noticed Melissa was already there, her car parked at the curb. Oh, Melissa came to help, I said, trying to sound pleased. Yeah, she wanted to make sure we didn't forget anything important, Adam replied, avoiding my eyes. Or to make sure I didn't do anything you don't want me to, I thought. Inside, Melissa was already upstairs, the sounds of drawers opening and closing drifting down to us. Adam helped me to my favorite armchair in the living room, then glanced at his watch. I'm going to help Melissa find your things, he said. You just rest here, okay? As soon as he disappeared upstairs, I pulled out my cell phone and texted Jacob. They're both upstairs, front door unlocked. 3 minutes later, Jacob slipped in quietly through the front door, legal briefcase in hand. He'd barely sat down across from me when Melissa's voice called from upstairs. Adam, come look at this. The urgency in her tone told me they'd found something they thought was valuable. Probably the jewelry box in my closet, the one with the fake pearls and costume pieces I'd deliberately left visible. They're looking for valuables, I whispered to Jacob. We don't have much time. Jacob nodded, opening his briefcase. I've drawn up a new will as you requested, but Eleanor, are you absolutely sure about this? More sure than I've ever been. About anything, I replied, taking the papers from him. I signed where he indicated, my hand steady despite everything. Jacob and I had just finished when the doorbell rang. Sandra had arrived right on time. Adam came rushing down the stairs. Who's that? Grandma, are you expecting someone? Oh, I said innocently. That must be Sandra. I asked her to bring me some of my special tea. The hospital food was dreadful for my digestion. Adam looked suspicious but opened the door. Sandra walked in, took one look at my bandaged head, and rushed to my side. Eleanor, my God, are you all right? When you called about the fall, I had no idea it was this serious. She was playing her part perfectly. We'd been friends for 40 years. She knew exactly what I needed without me having to explain everything. I'm fine, dear, I assured her, then gestured to Jacob. You remember Jacob Brenner, don't you? My husband's attorney? Sandra nodded. Of course. Adam's face had gone pale. What's going on, Grandma? Why is your lawyer here? I smiled at him, letting just a hint of steel show through my grandmotherly facade. Just updating a few things after my accident, dear. You never know what might happen at my age, right? Isn't that what you're counting on? The look on Adam's face was worth every second of pain I'd endured. His carefully crafted mask slipped, revealing the panic beneath. What do you mean? He stammered, his voice an octave higher than usual. I don't understand why you need a lawyer. Right now. I gave him my best confused grandmother look. Well, dear, after such a terrible fall, it made me realize how fragile life is. I just wanted to make sure everything's in order. Jacob cleared his throat, playing along perfectly. Standard procedure after a serious accident, especially at Mrs. Mitchell's age. Nothing to worry about. Melissa appeared at the bottom of the stairs, clutching a small suitcase. Her eyes darted between all of us, quickly assessing the situation. What's going on? She asked, her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes sharp as flint. Mrs. Mitchell was just signing some updated legal documents, Jacob explained, sliding the papers into his briefcase. What kind of documents? Melissa pressed, setting down the suitcase and moving closer to Adam. I waved my hand dismissively. Oh, just boring legal things. Nothing for you young people to worry about. I turned to Sandra. Did you bring my tea, dear? Sandra patted her handbag. Of course, Eleanor. And those digestive cookies you like. Perfect. I turned to Adam and Melissa. Why don't you two finish packing while I have a quick cup of tea with Sandra? The doctor said I should try to keep to my normal routines as much as possible. Adam hesitated, clearly wanting to know what I'd just signed, but unable to ask directly without revealing his true concerns. We're almost done upstairs, Melissa said finally. But don't take too long, Eleanor. You need to rest in a proper bed. Not sitting up in a chair. As soon as they disappeared upstairs again, I leaned toward Jacob and Sandra. It's done? I whispered. Jacob nodded. As of today, your entire estate is in the irrevocable trust we discussed. Adam is no longer your primary beneficiary. Sandra squeezed my hand. Are you sure you want to go home with them, Eleanor? You could stay with me. I shook my head. No, I need to see exactly what they're planning. Besides, I'm not finished yet. Jacob frowned. Be careful, Eleanor. If he was willing to push you once. I know, I said. But I'll have protection they don't know about. I reached for my purse and pulled out the card Dr. Rivera had given me. I need one more favor, Jacob. Can you call this doctor? Tell her I've agreed to document everything, but I'm doing it my way. 30 minutes later, Adam and Melissa had all packed what they considered the essentials, mostly my medications, some clothes, and oddly, my address book and financial files which I kept in my home office. They hadn't even tried to hide their snooping. As we prepared to leave, I asked to use the bathroom. Once inside, I quickly texted Sandra, remember, 6 p.m. tomorrow. Bring everything we discussed. The ride to Adam and Melissa's house was tense. I pretended to doze in the back seat while they whispered urgently to each other in the front, occasionally glancing back to make sure I was still asleep. Can't believe she called a lawyer, Melissa hissed. Calm down, Adam replied. It doesn't change anything. She still trusts us. I nearly laughed out loud. If only they knew. Their house was exactly what you'd expect from a young couple living beyond their means. Enormous, with expensive furniture that still had price tags underneath, and luxury cars in the garage that I suspected weren't fully paid for. They'd always lived this way, spending money they didn't have, then coming to me when the bills came due. The guest room they'd prepared for me was on the ground floor, far from their bedroom upstairs. It was nicely decorated but felt like a cell. The windows had new locks installed. For your safety, Grandma. And I noticed a small camera in the corner of the ceiling. What's that? I asked innocently, pointing to the camera. Oh, that's just for security, Melissa explained quickly. We have them all over the house. To watch me, more likely. How thoughtful, I murmured. That evening, the nurse they'd hired arrived. Her name was Heather, a thin woman in her 40s with an efficiency that bordered on coldness. She checked my vitals, examined my head wound, and gave me my evening medications. Mrs. Mitchell needs her rest now, she announced to Adam and Melissa. I'll stay until she's settled. As soon as they left, Heather's demeanor changed. She leaned in close, checking my bandages with genuine care. Dr. Rivera sent me, she whispered. I'm not really from the agency they think they hired. Relief flooded through me. So you're a friend, she said simply. And I'm here to make sure you're safe. Dr. Rivera is very concerned about your situation. I glanced at the camera in the corner. Don't worry about that, Heather said, following my gaze. I've been jamming it periodically. They'll think it's just technical difficulties. She pressed a small device in her pocket and a tiny red light on the camera went off. We can talk freely for about 3 minutes before I have to turn it back on. They're planning something, I whispered urgently. I don't know what exactly, but we know, Heather interrupted. Dr. Rivera has seen cases like this before. They'll probably try to over-medicate you, make you seem confused, then petition for guardianship. My blood ran cold. How long do I have? Not long. A week, maybe 2 before they start the process. Heather pulled something from her bag. Here, keep this with you at all times. It looks like a medical alert pendant, but it's actually a recording device and emergency button. I took the small device, which resembled the medical alerts many of my friends wore. If you're ever in immediate danger, press it 3 times quickly, Heather instructed. Otherwise, just keep it on. It'll record everything. She glanced at her watch. I need to turn the camera back on now. Take these pills. She handed me what looked like my regular medication. They're harmless vitamins, but they'll think you're taking the sedatives they've requested. After Heather left, I lay in bed thinking. The room was dark except for the small blinking light of the camera watching me. I clutched the pendant beneath my blanket, its presence oddly comforting. I hadn't told anyone the full extent of my plan yet. Not Jacob, not Sandra, not even Dr. Rivera. They knew pieces, but not the whole. They thought I was just protecting myself, ensuring Adam couldn't take control of my assets. But I wanted more than protection. I wanted justice. The next morning, Adam brought me breakfast in bed, something he'd never done before. The toast was perfectly browned, the eggs just how I liked them. He sat on the edge of my bed, watching me eat with an attentiveness that would have seemed loving to an outsider. How are you feeling today, Grandma? He asked, his voice gentle, a little foggy. I lied, playing into what I knew they wanted to hear. Those pills make me feel strange. He nodded, seemingly sympathetic. That's normal. The doctor said the medication might make you a bit confused at first. I doubted any legitimate doctor had said that. Adam, I said, forcing a tremor into my voice. I've been thinking about what you said before, about my house being too much for me now. His eyes lit up with poorly concealed excitement. Yes, maybe you're right. Maybe it's time to consider alternatives. He tried to hide his smile. I'm glad you're being sensible, Grandma. We only want what's best for you. I know, dear. I patted his hand. In fact, I was thinking we should go over my finances soon. Make sure everything's organized. He nearly salivated at the suggestion. That's a great idea. I'd be happy to help you with that. Maybe tomorrow when you're feeling stronger. That would be wonderful, I said, smiling weakly. I'm feeling tired now. I think I'll rest a bit more. Of course. He took my breakfast tray. Just call if you need anything. As soon as the door closed behind him, I heard his hurried footsteps as he rushed to tell Melissa the good news. I smiled to myself, settled back against my pillows, and waited. The pieces were falling into place. By noon, I heard Adam and Melissa's excited whispers from the kitchen. They weren't even trying to be discreet anymore, confident that the medication had left me in a foggy haze. She practically offered to sign everything over, Adam was saying. I told you this would work. Melissa's voice was more cautious. Don't celebrate yet. That lawyer showing up wasn't part of the plan. We need to move faster. Relax. She trusts me. She always has. That's her weakness. His words cut through me like glass. That's her weakness. My love for him, the years I'd spent raising him, all reduced to a vulnerability to be exploited. I touched the recording pendant beneath my nightgown, making sure it was capturing every word. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 p.m. right on schedule. From my bedroom, I heard Melissa answer. Oh, hello. Sandra, right? Eleanor's friend? Yes, dear. I brought some things Eleanor asked for. Is she awake? She's been resting most of the day. The medication. I won't stay long, Sandra interrupted, her voice firm. I promised Eleanor I'd bring these by. I smiled to myself. Sandra had been my best friend since our teaching days 4 decades ago. She'd never let anyone push her around. My bedroom door opened a few minutes later. Sandra entered, followed closely by Melissa, whose eyes darted nervously around the room. Eleanor! Sandra exclaimed, rushing to my bedside. She carried a large tote bag. How are you feeling, dear? Better now that you're here, I said truthfully. Sandra turned to Melissa. Could we have a moment alone? Girl talk, you know. Melissa hesitated. Eleanor needs rest, and the doctor said, It's fine, Melissa, I said, injecting just the right amount of feeble gratitude into my voice. Sandra won't stay long. After Melissa reluctantly left, closing the door behind her, Sandra immediately activated the signal jammer Heather had left with me. We have about 3 minutes, she whispered, pulling items from her bag. Jacob and I found these in your home office safe, exactly where you said they'd be. She handed me a thick manila envelope. Inside were documents I'd been collecting for years, bank statements showing the money I'd loaned Adam, emails where he'd promised to repay me, and records of my investments in his failed business ventures. Over $300,000 in total. Perfect, I whispered, quickly scanning the papers. And the other thing? Sandra pulled out a small digital recorder. It was exactly where you said, hidden in the bookshelf. I checked it, and it works. It recorded everything. My hands trembled as I took the device. 2 days before my accident, Adam had come to my house asking for money again. Anticipating a confrontation, I'd hidden a recorder in my living room bookshelf. What I'd captured was more damning than I could have imagined. Have you listened to it? I asked. Sandra nodded, her expression grim. Eleanor, it's worse than you thought. He and Melissa. They've been planning this for months. I pressed play, keeping the volume low. Adam's voice filled the room. Just need to get her to sign over power of attorney. Once we control her finances, we sell the house, move her assets, and then nature takes its course. Melissa's voice. Your grandmother is stubborn? What if she refuses? Then we create a situation where she doesn't have a choice. There are ways to make elderly people seem incompetent. The right medications, a few staged incidents. I stopped the recording, my stomach churning. Even knowing what he'd done, hearing it laid out so coldly was devastating. There's more, Sandra said quietly. They discussed specific plans, including... She hesitated. Making your fall look like an accident if necessary. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I'd suspected, of course, after he pushed me, but to hear they'd been plotting my death for months. I need to get out of here, I whispered. Tonight, Sandra agreed. Jacob has everything ready. Dr. Rivera has arranged for a safe place at the hospital temporarily. I shook my head. No, if I leave now, they'll know something's wrong. They might destroy evidence, cover their tracks. I need them to believe I'm still playing into their hands. Sandra looked worried. Eleanor, it's not safe. Just one more day, I insisted. Tomorrow, Adam wants to go over my finances. That's when I'll spring the trap. Sandra didn't look convinced, but she knew me well enough not to argue. At least take this, she said, pulling something else from her bag. A small canister. Pepper spray. Keep it under your pillow. I tucked it away just as the signal jammer's light blinked, indicating our private time was ending. Sandra quickly hid the documents and recorder in the false bottom of my toiletries bag. Somewhere Adam and Melissa would never think to look. When Melissa checked on us a minute later, we were looking at photo albums Sandra had brought, reminiscing about old times. After Sandra left, I played my role perfectly, the increasingly confused grandmother, docile and trusting. When Heather arrived for my evening check, she gave me more medication, which I dutifully appeared to take. Once alone, I retrieved the recorder and listened to the full conversation Sandra had brought. Tears streamed down my face as I heard Adam and Melissa discuss their plans in horrifying detail. Not just to take my money, but to ensure I wouldn't be around to change my mind. Once we get control of her accounts, Adam had said, we move her to Pinecrest Nursing Home. That place is perfect. Understaffed, minimal supervision. With her condition and the right medications, she won't last 6 months. Melissa had laughed. Actually laughed. I'd raised him from a 5-year-old boy, changed his diapers when he wet the bed, sat up nights when he had fevers, attended every school play, every baseball game, helped him through college applications, loaned him money whenever he asked, and all that time, the sweet boy I thought I knew had grown into this monster. Morning came with a strange calm. I knew exactly what I needed to do. When Adam brought my breakfast, I smiled weakly at him. Adam, dear, I said, my voice deliberately shaky, I've been thinking about what we discussed. About my finances. He set the tray down, barely able to contain his eagerness. Yes, Grandma? I'd like to go over everything today, if that's possible. My accounts, the house, everything. His eyes lit up. Of course, I can help you with all of that. Make sure everything's taken care of properly. I'm sure you can, I thought. There's a folder in my toiletries bag, I said. My banking information. Could you get it for me? Adam, I practically lunged for my bag, rummaging through it until he found the folder. Not the hidden one with the evidence, but a decoy I'd prepared with Sandra's help. Maybe after breakfast we could go through it all, I suggested. Absolutely, Adam agreed, unable to hide his smile. I'll get Melissa. She's good with financial stuff. As he hurried from the room, I touched the recording pendant, making sure it was active. Then I reached under my pillow, feeling the reassuring shape of the pepper spray. The trap was set. Now I just needed my prey to walk into it. Adam returned, with Melissa in tow, both trying to mask their excitement with concerned expressions. Melissa carried a notepad and pen, as if we were about to have a casual financial discussion, rather than what they hoped would be the surrender of my entire life savings. "Let's make sure you're comfortable first, Eleanor," Melissa said, fluffing my pillows with fake solicitude. "Thank you, dear," I replied, my voice frail. I'd perfected the art of appearing weaker than I was. Slightly trembling hands, occasional confused glances, the subtle wince of pain. "You're both so good to me." Adam pulled chairs closer to my bed. "So, Grandma, you mentioned wanting to go through your accounts?" "Yes," I said, gesturing to the folder he'd retrieved. "Everything should be in there. My bank accounts, investment, portfolio, the deed to the house." Melissa could barely contain herself as Adam opened the folder and began scanning the documents. I watched their faces carefully, the growing excitement, the quick glances they exchanged, the barely suppressed smiles. "This is very comprehensive, Grandma," Adam said, his voice professionally concerned. "But managing all this must be overwhelming. For you now." "It is," I admitted, sighing heavily. "That's why I've been thinking. Maybe it would be better if someone else handled everything." "That's very sensible," Melissa jumped in. "Many people your age find financial matters too stressful." "We could help," Adam offered, trying to sound reluctant rather than eager. "I mean, if that's what you want." I looked down at my hands as if contemplating. "I think that might be for the best. After my fall, I'm just not as sharp as I used to be." "It happens to everyone," Melissa said soothingly. "The important thing is that you're taken care of." Adam reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. "Actually, Grandma, I took the liberty of drawing up some paperwork that might help. It's a power of attorney form. It would let us handle your finances for you. No more stress." How convenient that he already had the document prepared. I took it with shaking hands, pretending to struggle with reading the fine print. "This seems very thorough," I murmured. "It's standard," Adam assured me. "Nothing complicated, it just makes everything easier." I set the paper down on my lap. "Before I sign anything, I do have a few questions." "Of course," Adam said, though I could see impatience flickering in his eyes. "What would happen to my house?" I asked innocently. Adam and Melissa exchanged quick glances. "Well," Melissa began carefully, "your house is quite large for just one person, and the maintenance costs are substantial. We were thinking," Adam continued, "that it might make more sense to sell it. Put the money into a safe investment for your care." "I see," I nodded slowly. "And where would I live?" "With us, of course," Melissa said quickly. "At least initially." Initially. The word hung in the air between us. "And later?" I pressed. Adam cleared his throat. "Well, as you continue to recover, we might need to consider a facility with specialized care. Somewhere with trained medical staff, like Pinecrest Nursing Home?" I asked, watching their faces carefully. A flash of surprise crossed Adam's features before he could control it. "Pinecrest? I don't think we've discussed that specific—" "That's odd," I interrupted, my voice suddenly stronger. "Because I distinctly remember you telling Melissa it was perfect, understaffed, minimal supervision, a place where I wouldn't last 6 months." The color drained from Adam's face. Beside him, Melissa went rigid. "Grandma, I don't know what you're talking about," Adam stammered. "You must be confused." "Am I?" I reached for my toiletries bag, the real one, with the hidden compartment Sandra had prepared. "Grandma, you should rest," Melissa interjected sharply. "You're clearly not yourself." I ignored her, retrieving the digital recorder. "Actually, I'm more myself than I've been in weeks. Certainly more than when I was lying on the sidewalk bleeding after Adam pushed me." "That's ridiculous," Adam exploded, standing up. "You fell." "Did I?" I pressed play on the recorder. Adam's voice filled the room. "If she won't sign voluntarily, we create a situation. A fall, an accident, something that gives us control." Melissa's voice followed. "Isn't that dangerous? What if she gets seriously hurt? At her age, accidents happen all the time. No one would question it." I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was deafening. Where did you get that? Melissa finally whispered, her face ashen. You're not the only one who can plan ahead, I said coldly. I've suspected for months that something wasn't right. The constant requests for money, the sudden interest in my health, the casual questions about my will. Adam's face had transformed, the mask of loving grandson completely gone. In its place was something hard and ugly, the real Adam, the one who had left me bleeding on the sidewalk. You don't understand what you're doing, he hissed. You're just a confused old woman. Am I? I pulled out the manila envelope Sandra had brought, removing the bank statements. Is this confusion? $300,000, Adam. That's how much I've given you over the years. Money you promised to repay but never did. I was going to pay you back when my business took off, he protested. Your business? I scoffed. Which one? The restaurant that failed in 3 months? The tech startup that never launched? The investment scheme that was one step away from being a Ponzi? Melissa stood up, grabbing Adam's arm. We should go. She's clearly not in her right mind. I touched the pendant around my neck. Before you leave, you should know that everything that's happened in this room, everything that's happened since I arrived in your house, has been recorded. The cameras you installed to spy on me, they work both ways. Adam lunged toward me, his face contorted with rage. Give me that recorder. I was ready for him. My hand shot out from under the blanket, pepper spray aimed directly at his face. He recoiled just in time. Touch me again, I said evenly, and I'll press the emergency button on this pendant. Dr. Rivera and the police will be here in minutes. They're waiting for my signal. Adam backed away, his chest heaving. You're bluffing. Try me, I challenged. Or better yet, look outside. Melissa rushed to the window, pulling back the curtain. Her gasp told me what she'd seen. The police car parked discreetly down the street, exactly as Jacob had arranged. You can't prove anything, Adam said desperately. It's your word against ours, I smiled coldly. That's why I needed time. To gather evidence, to record your conversations, to document the medications you've been trying to give me. Medications no doctor prescribed. I held up the power of attorney document he'd brought. Did you really think I wouldn't notice this? Isn't a standard form? That it gives you power to not just manage my finances, but to make medical decisions, including whether to resuscitate me? Melissa began to cry, ugly, panicked sobs. Adam, what do we do? Adam's face had turned to stone. What do you want? He asked me flatly. I looked at my grandson, this stranger wearing the face of the boy I'd loved, and felt nothing but cold determination. I want you to understand exactly what you've done, I said quietly, and I want you to face the consequences. Adam laughed bitterly. So that's it? You're sending us to jail? Your own grandson? My own grandson died the moment he pushed me onto that sidewalk, I replied. Maybe he never really existed at all. I reached for my cell phone. I'm calling Jacob now. He'll bring in the officers. Waiting outside, you can either stay and face what's coming or you can run. But understand this. There is nowhere you can go where I won't find you. Not anymore. As I dialed, Adam and Melissa looked at each other, trapped animals realizing the cage had been locked all along. 1 year later, I sat on my porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. My garden was in full bloom. The roses I'd planted in spring, the hydrangeas my neighbor had gifted me, the vegetable patch that supplied my kitchen with fresh produce. My little sanctuary, rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. The aftermath of that confrontation had unfolded like a slow-motion collision. When Jacob arrived with the police officers, Adam tried to run. He made it as far as the backyard before they caught him. Melissa collapsed in hysterics, alternating between blaming Adam and pleading innocence. I watched it all with a strange detachment, as if observing a play rather than the implosion of what remained of my family. The officers were gentle with me, respectful. One of them, a woman about my daughter's age would have been, kept calling me ma'am with such deference it almost made me smile. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the falsified medical documents, the financial records, the testimony from Dr. Rivera and Heather about the unnecessary medications. The prosecutor called it one of the most calculated cases of elder abuse she'd ever seen. Adam and Melissa took a plea deal rather than face trial, 3 years for attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person and reckless endangerment. It could have been longer if I'd pushed, but I didn't see the point. No prison sentence would give me back what I'd lost, not the money, but the love I thought I had. The weeks after their arrest passed in a blur. I sold my old house, Too many memories, too many shadows. With Jacob's help, I found this smaller place on the edge of town. Single story, manageable garden, friendly neighbors. A place to start over. Sandra visited nearly every day during those first difficult months. Sometimes we talked about what happened, but more often we just sat together in comfortable silence, or reminisced about our teaching days, or planned my garden. Her steady presence was a lifeline when grief threatened to pull me under, because I did grieve. Not just for Adam, but for the grandchild I thought I had. The sweet boy who brought me dandelions and called me Gram Gram. The teenager who helped me learn to use a smartphone. The young man who hugged me at his college graduation and whispered, "I couldn't have done it without you." Had that person ever existed? Or had I simply seen what I wanted to see? Dr. Rivera suggested therapy, and reluctantly I agreed. Dr. Winters was a kind, no-nonsense woman in her 60s who specialized in trauma and grief. "What you're experiencing is a special kind of loss," she explained during our first session. "Ambiguous loss, grieving, someone who is still physically alive but emotionally absent." She helped me understand that I could mourn the grandson I thought I had, while acknowledging the reality of who Adam actually was. That I could be angry, furiously, righteously angry, without letting that anger consume me. "Your healing isn't about forgiveness," she told me once, when I admitted I couldn't bring myself to forgive Adam. "It's about reclaiming your life." And slowly, painfully, I did. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my memories. I rose from the porch swing, my movements more fluid than they had been a year ago. Physical therapy had done wonders for the lingering effects of my fall. Sandra stood at the door, holding a casserole dish. Behind her was Jacob, carrying a bottle of wine, and Dr. Rivera with a bouquet of sunflowers. My new family, the one I had chosen. "Right on time," I greeted them, holding the door open. "We wouldn't miss your anniversary celebration," Sandra said, kissing my cheek as she passed. Anniversary. 1 year since the confrontation. 1 year of rebuilding, of healing, of finding my way back to myself. We gathered around my dining table, the conversation flowing easily as we shared the meal. These monthly dinners had become a tradition, a reminder that family isn't always defined by blood. "I have news," Jacob announced as we finished dessert. "The restitution case is finally settled. The court has ordered the sale of Adam and Melissa's house and liquidation of their assets." I nodded, feeling nothing but a distant sadness. The money meant little to me now. I had enough for my needs and the irrevocable trust Jacob had set up, ensured I would be secure for whatever years I had left. "There's something else," Jacob continued, his expression softening. "Adam has requested to see you." The table fell silent. I set down my wine glass carefully. "When?" "Next month. He's eligible for his first supervised visit." Jacob watched me closely. "You don't have to see him, Eleanor. No one would blame you if you refused." I gazed out the window at my garden, considering. Did I want to see Adam? To sit across from the person who had planned my death, who had pushed me down and left me bleeding, who had calculated how quickly I would die in a substandard nursing home? "I'll think about it," I said finally. Later, after my friends had gone, I sat alone on the porch again. The night was clear. Stars scattered across the velvet sky like diamonds on black cloth. From somewhere nearby came the sound of a child's laughter, carried on the gentle breeze. I thought about Adam's request. What would I say to him if I went? What could he possibly say to me? Maybe I would go, not for him, but for myself. To look him in the eye, not as a victim, but as a survivor. To let him see that despite his best efforts, I was still here, still standing, still living. Or maybe I wouldn't go. Maybe I would choose to keep my peace, to focus on this new life I was building, the garden that needed tending, the memoir I had started writing, the volunteer work at the senior center where I helped other elderly people recognize and avoid financial exploitation. The beauty of it was that the choice was mine, entirely mine. 3 days after my friend's dinner, I received a letter from prison. Adam's handwriting on the envelope. I held it for a long time before opening it, feeling its weight, physical and emotional, in my hands. Inside was a single page, covered in his familiar scrawl. "Grandma, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you should, but I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry. Not just for what I did to you, but for who I became. There's no excuse. I can't blame Mom's death or Dad's absence or financial pressure or Melissa's influence. I made my choices. Terrible, unforgivable choices. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that not everything was a lie. When I was little, when you taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my science projects and stayed up with me when I had nightmares, that was real. I loved you then. Truly. I don't know when or how I lost my way so completely. Maybe it was gradual. Maybe there was always something broken in me. I'm trying to understand it in therapy here, but understanding doesn't undo the harm. If you're willing to see me next month, I'd be grateful. If not, I understand. Either way, I hope I hope you found peace. I folded the letter carefully and returned it to its envelope. Then I walked out to my garden, knelt in the soft earth, and began to plant the tulip bulbs I'd been saving for fall. Bright red ones that would bloom in spring. Some people might see forgiveness as the end of a journey like mine. The final healing. The closing of a circle. But I had learned something different. Forgiveness wasn't required for healing. Sometimes healing came from accepting that some things can't be forgiven or forgotten, only survived and transformed. I pressed the dark soil over the bulbs, patting it gently into place. Would I visit Adam? I still didn't know. But for the first time, I realized that uncertainty didn't frighten me. Nothing really frightened me anymore. I had survived the worst betrayal imaginable. I had faced down death and deception. I had rebuilt my life from fragments. They said I wouldn't make it, but I did. And whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms, in my own time, with the quiet strength of a woman who knew exactly who she was.